There are laws that are contrary to God's laws, which require personal participation, like on plains of Dura, the three Hebrews bow to the image or go into the furnace. We're going to be good, thank you. Or Daniel in the lion's den. Now, I don't think we face too many of those today, except we do know that there are health professionals that have refused to be involved in abortions that have gotten demoted or fired. We do know that people lost their jobs and careers over refusing a COVID shot that they thought personally was immoral to take for various reasons. We know that there are issues and times and things that are costly to us. We're not really dealing in that area. We're going to deal with that probably next week. But what do we do with laws that we believe are wrong but don't require our involvement? Is there a place where we should interface? Now, when Prop 139 was passed last November 5, making abortion legal in Arizona for any or no reason, and for the flimsiest reasons, right up to the moment before natural birth, 2/3 majority vote, overwhelming. I said to myself, okay, that isn't the way I wanted it to go. I don't believe that's morally right. So how do we interface as a church? And then I got an email inviting pastors from various churches in the area to come together where we were going to talk about that very thing. So I believe it was December 8. I went to a meeting and I listened to a presentation from an organization entitled Choices. And I was impressed with their attitude, their methodology, their mercy, their compassion, their heart for people. Dealing with pre-abortion, post-abortion, how do you deal with this? Because when we do things that are contrary to God's ways, it breaks us and it breaks others. How do we handle this? And I was impressed with their presentation. I invited them to come and have breakfast with my wife and I, and we had a long conversation a few days later. A few months later, I invited them to come to staff meeting. We talked about it as a staff, and we decided to invite them here to share with us some concepts on dealing with Prop 139, the abortion issue, and how we can have a compassionate, loving, and healing approach to what I believe is a very damaging part of our society. And so I've invited Mark Burmich, who's the president and CEO of Choices, and Lorraine Robbins, who's in charge of the clinics, the centers, to share with us some things today. And I hope that you are as impressed with maybe what the possibilities are of how we can have a compassionate and positive approach to the brokenness that some of our societal things bring upon ourselves. How do we help people in the midst of a broken world? So I'm going to invite Mark and Lorraine to come and share with us at this time.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? All right. Well, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to be here this morning. As Pastor said, my name is Mark Burmich, and I have the honor and the privilege of serving as the president and CEO of an amazing organization called Choices Pregnancy Centers. And my time with you here this morning it's not going to be a sermon on the sanctity of human life. We are going to talk a little bit about what we do as an organization at Choices. But really our time here with you this morning is we want to share with you how we at Choices approach and see this issue called pro-life, this issue called abortion, and everything in between. Now, Choices has been around for 42 years, and we've seen almost 300,000 clients. Now, we're a pro-life, Christ-centered organization, and everything that I'm going to present to you today is based on that framework. Nothing that I'm going to share with you is anecdotal. It's all based on these clients that we've met with over the past 42 years. And I always want to be very specific when I get up here and speak. Here's our objective for today. If you're sitting out there today and you're ardently pro-life, if you're somewhere in the middle, if you're ardently pro-choice, this message is for you. I'm here today to give you a unique perspective on how we approach this issue every single day. And I hope at the end of today, you have a new perspective and a new way of looking at the issue that you didn't have before. And our end goal really at the end of the day is very simple, and it's this: that the church, all of us as Christ followers, see the power that we have when we come together to attack and to approach an issue like abortion. No other entity, government or otherwise, has more influence and more ability to impact change than the church and the body of believers when we come together. That's really what we want to leave with you today. Now, I'm going to build this in layers. I'm going to keep it as succinct as possible. And so we're going to start right here at the very beginning. Now, this dark pixelated circle that you see on the screen behind me, that's actually an unfertilized human egg amplified and magnified by about 1,000 times. Northwestern University scientists were able to conduct an experiment where they were actually able to capture the moment of conception and fertilization, and this is what it looks like. That spark of light that you see is actually the egg itself releasing zinc. It is truly the spark of life that we talk so much about. Now, at this moment in time, mom's DNA, dad's DNA, they come together and life is formed inside the womb. And it's here that life begins, right? I'm going to hit some high points for you so you have it. At 21 days in, the baby's heart begins to beat. At 6 weeks in, the entire brain and spinal cord are formed. 7 weeks in, the baby is forming its own blood, often a different blood type than the mother's. At 8 weeks, the baby can move its trunk and its limbs. And at 9 weeks, the nose and ears are now visible. At 10 weeks, 25,000 brain cells are formed every single minute. The rate of cellular reproduction in the womb, which is what David talks about in the knitting together in the womb, is something that scientists cannot explain. They can tell you what's happening, but they can't tell you what's happening or why it's happening. And if you go back to the beginning, keep in mind that all of the trillions of cells that form our body, there's a grand architecture telling each of these individual cells, you guys, you're going to be the brain, and you cells, you're going to be the heart, and you cells, you're going to be the liver, and so on and so forth. That's the architecture taking place. At 11 weeks, the baby now has all of its major organs, and at 14 weeks, the baby can suck its own thumb, and its nails begin to grow. From this moment on, for the next 26 weeks of pregnancy, that baby will do nothing more than simply grow and get bigger. And we end up with this right here. This is a baby in utero, well into his 3rd trimester, and he's having a great time. He can't wait to get out. He's stretching his legs. This is sped up a little bit for time, but this is life in the womb, right before birth. Now, I start here on purpose because this is the foundational layer from which we're going to build today in our conversation. That's life in the womb. We recognize that as God bringing life together, knitting together, that's life in the womb. Now, it's here that I want to segue, and we're going to go to our next layer, and it's right here in Arizona. What are the laws on the books regarding abortion? Now, whether or not you think abortion is going to impact you, whether you care, it's important that we, as citizens of Arizona, understand what the laws are. And to figure out where we're at today, we have to go back in time to 1973. In 1973, the United States Supreme Court heard the Roe versus Wade case. They voted on that. Roe became law, and basically for the last 50 years, Roe was the law of the land. And at a very high level, here's what Roe stated. All abortions allowed in the 1st trimester, limited abortions in the 2nd trimester, little to no abortions in the 3rd trimester, and that was the law for 50 years. Until 2022. In 2022, that same Supreme Court heard the Dobbs case. I won't go into all the details, it's not relevant. But Justice Alito, on the United States Supreme Court, he made the decision and made the comment that, you know what, I don't think we, as members of the United States Supreme Court, have the right to determine when life begins. He's right, they don't. And so that decision got pushed back down to the states. And all of this culminated in November of last year at the election that we just had, with Proposition 139 being on the ballot. By show of hands, how many of you, when you went to vote last November, were you aware of Proposition 139? Okay. When you went to go vote, Did you feel like you understood all the nuances of 139? Would you raise your hands? Okay, pretty common response. I'm going to walk you through real quick, where do we stand today in Arizona with the passing of 139? And here it is. I've broken it up into 3 sections. The first is legal. Here's what 139 states. Abortion is now a constitutionally protected state right in Arizona up to the point of fetal viability. Most people read that. They stopped there. They thought, okay, this is like a common sense law. It's a 15-week law. I'm just going to go ahead and sign off on that. But you have to read the next portion, which is what I call the switch, which is short for bait and switch. The next section inside of 139 states that a healthcare professional can make a determination that an abortion is necessary if it's causing mental, physical, or emotional harm to the mother through all 9 months of pregnancy. See how we just nullified the first part? Notice I did not say obstetrician, I didn't say doctor, I said healthcare professional. That's how 139 is written. It's nebulous by design. That means a chiropractor, a podiatrist, a dermatologist can basically state, yep, this woman needs to get an abortion at 9 months, and it can happen inside the state of Arizona. The last piece is the lawfare component. 139 states that courts and law enforcement are prohibited from interfering and stopping these abortions from taking place. That's really important because abortionists need to know they're not going to get arrested, sued, or lose their licenses or go to jail if they conduct these abortions. That is everything that you were told about 139 in its entirety. Now I want to tell you what the fallout is actually going to be from 139. The first is the pill, which is short for the abortion pill. By show of hands, how many of you have heard of the abortion pill? Okay. The abortion pill now accounts for 63% of all abortions in the United States of America today. It is what I call a paradigm shift in the abortion industry. In fact, more abortions have happened since the overturning of Roe than before, and it's because of the abortion pill. Now, the danger of the abortion pill is this. It's how it's actually promoted and marketed to young women. Women are told they can use it as birth control, they can keep it in their medicine cabinet. There is zero regulation. It's often purchased from overseas pharmacies, typically in India. They're brought into the United States. And for those that push the abortion pill, here's how they sell it. They'll say it is, quote, safer than Tylenol, end quote. In fact, right now, if you were to go to Planned Parenthood's website, they have an instructional video that tells young women, hey, if you take the abortion pill, here's what you need to do. Take a couple of days off of work, get a heating pad, get some ibuprofen, you're going to experience cramping and bleeding, and that's it. Nowhere in there are they told, for your own safety and well-being, you need to go see a doctor, and you need to get an ultrasound, and you need to confirm that this is a viable pregnancy and that there aren't any dangers involved. But because women aren't doing that, they're taking the pill at home, alone, in their dormitories oftentimes, in private, and they're having massive complications arise as a result. In fact, a study was released last October that stated there has been a 4,000% increase in critical ER visits because of the abortion pill. The pill is the fallout from 139 because what's going to happen as a result of 139, the pill and the use of it is going to skyrocket in Arizona. And you can quote me today that if it goes long enough unabated, the abortion pill will be available on school campuses being distributed by nurses to your daughters and granddaughters. That's going to happen. The next is the trafficking component. It's short for human trafficking. If we go back to the first part of 139, what does it state? Anybody can make a determination that an abortion is necessary through all 9 months of pregnancy, it doesn't have to be a doctor, and that law enforcement is prohibited from interfering. So what did we just do? We just created a revolving door, get out of jail free card for human traffickers to bring young women into the state of Arizona to get abortions and then take those young women and put them right back out into prostitution again. That's going to skyrocket in Arizona because of 139. The last piece is what I call the governmental piece. I'm not here to talk about parties or candidates, but I will always give you objective truth. And the truth is, right now, the Attorney General here in Arizona does not like places like Choices Pregnancy Centers. And when she came into office, she created something called the Reproductive Rights Unit. And under that unit, she put out a consumer alert last year telling people to stay away from places like Choices. She said that we lie, that we use coercion, false advertising, we're not medical, we're only staffed by volunteers. None of it was true, but it didn't matter. It was already out in the public. and nobody bothered to verify it. This is going to increase, and what's going to happen as a result of 139 is the government's going to ratchet things down and make it harder and harder for places like Choices to stay in business. And legislation is already being crafted right now. They're going to continue to go after the laws that we have on the books, things like parental consent. They will go after parental consent. And what that means is your daughters, your granddaughters can be able to go to get an abortion or get the abortion pill, and nobody has to legally notify you that it's happening. Doesn't matter how young they are. That's going to be the fallout of 139. I know I just sucked all the oxygen out of the room. This is a terrible way to start any presentation. But I'm doing it on purpose because, not to be melodramatic, this is where we're at today. This is the state of things in Arizona. But as bad as all of this is, it's here that I want to give you some good news, and I want to introduce you to my organization, which is Choices Pregnancy Centers. Very simply put, Choices is Arizona's largest, longest-running, pro-life, Christ-centered pregnancy resource group. We have been in operation for 42 years. We've had the privilege of receiving over 285,000 clients come through our center doors. If you've ever been to the Phoenix Suns arena, that's like filling the arena 14 and a half times. That's how many clients we've seen. We've been able to save over 11,000 babies from abortion. And because we are unapologetically Christ-centered, we will have conversations with our clients when they come in, what we call spiritual conversations. Talk to us about your spirituality. We offer to pray with our clients. And if they let us, we actually share the gospel message with them. And we've been able to see over 2,500 people accept Jesus inside of our centers over 42 years. We have locations in Glendale, Camelback Road and 19th Avenue, our brand new 11,000 square foot space in Mesa, on the campus of North Phoenix Church through their Hope Center program. And we just launched a mobile unit that now takes our services all the way from Casa Grande all the way out to Buckeye. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, but here's a little bit about what we offer. At Choices, we offer free pregnancy tests and free ultrasounds. Everything we offer at Choices is 100% free. We receive no federal funding of any kind. We are 100% donor funded. We offer options counseling. This is conversations about alternatives to abortion, things like adoption. We offer STD testing. We offer education programs, very comprehensive education programs. This is everything from nurse-led classes on what to expect during pregnancy, what is delivery going to look like, all the way to our parenting education programs, which is how to be a mom, how to be a dad, how to build a resume, how to find a job, how to manage your finances. We offer post-abortive care. This is for individuals that have gone through the pain and loss of an abortion. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. And we also offer boutiques. Inside of our centers, we have what we call storefronts or boutiques. And inside these boutiques, we have everything from formula, wipes, diapers, cribs, and car seats, everything mom and dad are going to need for that baby. And they can get all of those items 100% for free just by taking our parenting education programs. And so this is how we describe who we are. At Choices, we are a ministry operating in the mission field created by unplanned pregnancy. Notice it doesn't say a mission field created by abortion. Abortion could be a potential inevitability, but that's not where we meet our clients. We meet our clients at this intersection of they think they might be pregnant, they don't know what to do, they're scared, and that's where we get to minister to them every single day. So now we're going to build our next layer. And it's here that I want you to, if you get nothing else out of today, I really want you to pay attention to this section because it's very important. And it's this right here. How do we at Choices see this abortion issue? We deal with this every day. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I know it can be a very divisive conversation. It can be things that we don't want to talk about and shed light on. But I'm going to walk you through how we see it at Choices and hopefully give you a different perspective. So in order to do that, we have to put on our biblical worldview filter. If we don't use our biblical worldview filter, we will miss entirely how we should look at this issue. I have a biblical worldview, which means that dictates how I look at life, sexuality, social justice issues, abortion. Anything and everything goes through that filter. So if we put on our biblical worldview filter, here is how we see and distill down this very nuanced, divisive issue called abortion. And here it is. At its very heart and at its very essence, we see the abortion issue as a spiritual heart issue. Full stop. Now stay with me for a minute. We don't see it play out in popular culture like this, do we? We see it play out like this. We see it play out as a healthcare issue. Abortion is healthcare. We're told that all the time. We see it play out as a political issue, right? Every election season, candidates and parties, they take it, they leverage it, it becomes a political football. We see it as a rights issue. Abortion is her right. We see it as a choice issue, right? It's my body, my choice. And to deny her that is to deny her right to health care. Socioeconomic is a big one we see at choices. This is individuals that maybe they want to keep this baby, but financially they can't make it happen. It doesn't make any sense for them. We see it play out as a community failure issue. We see this a lot at choices. Mom wants to keep the child, but there's no family, there's no community, there's no church to support her along the journey, so she doesn't keep the child. And the last is the upward mobility one. This can be a mom still in school. This can be a mom who's got a job that she needs to work at to get more money to make ends meet, to pay for her other children, and on it goes. This is how we see this issue play out in popular culture, and if you've ever wondered why this is such a divisive, complicated, nuanced, polarizing issue, this is why. It is complicated by design. This is not an exhaustive list. For all of these that we've created, we could create a dozen more. Some of you in here, you may live in one of these camps. You may know people who live in one of these camps. But because this is how we see the issue and we know what it is at its essence, what is our response to the issue as an organization? And it's this right here. At Choices, we exist to show unconditional love and provide education, support, and hope, and point clients to a one true hope in a broken world, and see lives transformed and saved through a relationship with Jesus Christ. That's it. Notice what's not up on the screen is all the services we offer. That's actually not what we're here to do. The services are the tools by which to do this. Because all of our clients coming in, they need the hope, they need the education, they need the support. And that's what we're here to do through a relationship with Jesus Christ. We call this greater love. Greater love happens to be our tagline at Choices. Let me make a very clear distinction. This is not the Beatles version of free love, where you can do whatever you want, to whomever you want, be as debaucherous as you want, we'll slap the label of love on it and we just have to celebrate it. No. Greater love is the greater love of Jesus Christ. And when we see Jesus Christ's love played out in the New Testament, there's a reason why how he interacted with society and culture and sin is documented. It's a roadmap for you and I. When we see how Jesus interacted with sin and with culture, what is it? It's a two-part love. The first part is forgiveness. Unconditional forgiveness. But Jesus doesn't stop there, does he? The greater love of Jesus also is the truth component, which is stop doing what is hurting you. It's a corrective love. It's a love that guides. And that's what we do with Choices. When these men and women come in, we don't bring them in and lock the door and say, hey, you're not getting out of here unless you choose life. We don't point the finger and condemn them for the situations and the decisions that led them here. That's not our place there. They need help. They need resources. They need the greater love of Jesus, and that is what we provide them at Choices. Now, greater love is on no better, greater display at Choices than inside of our post-abortive program. And this is a program where we bring in women that have actually had abortions, and we help them through this process. And it's right here that I want to invite to the stage Lorraine Robbins. Lorraine Robbins oversees our Phoenix Center location at 19th Avenue and Camelback Road. It happens to be our fastest growing location. She has been with Choices, I think, 22 years now, and she's going to provide her perspective on what she has seen over the past 2 decades. Lorraine.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. This is such a privilege and an honor to be able to just share what happens in our centers each day. And I have been here. I started as a volunteer in this ministry 22 years ago, and then I became staff. And I just want to talk a little bit about our post-abortion recovery and what that means for our clients when they come in, our volunteers, our staff. See, I had an abortion when I was 18 years old. 47 years ago. So you probably are doing the math now, and that's okay. I had an abortion, so I know when these women walk into our center and they're looking to have an abortion, or they're looking because they're hurting. We did some stats last year and we found out 450 women that come in for our services had one or more abortions. And we want the church to know also what this program entails. So when they come in for post-abortion recovery, they're able to memorialize that life. No longer is it an abortion, but it's a life. It's a baby. It's their baby. They're able to name their baby. They're able to realize, if they know Jesus as their Lord and Savior, that they'll see that baby one day. And that is the excitement part for me, is I know one day I'll see my daughter in heaven. I know that that abortion, God, He uses us. He turns us around full circle, right? He uses that thing that nearly destroys us, and He turns it for His glory. And I'm able to use my story sitting in the center every day. Not only that, but you know what? We want people to know that God loves them. He forgives them for that sin. Not only does He forgive them, but through this program, they're able to realize that they can forgive themselves. They can accept Jesus and accept His forgiveness, because that is real. And so through the program, a lot of times we see these women that come in and they are very broken from this abortion experience, just as I was. I experienced extreme shame. I didn't want anybody to know that I had ever made a decision to have an abortion. But through this program, I was able to learn that I can let go of that shame. Through this program, those shackles of shame have fallen off. A lot of women come in and they talk about their regret. They deeply regret their decision to have an abortion. In my time here, I worked 5 years solely with women who have had an abortion. Some women had called out, had reached out, some of our clients, days after their abortion, and they were brokenhearted. They were in deep depression, even talked about suicide. They wanted to take their lives. I met a dear girl who had come to our center. She had heard everything that we had to say, but the pressure was so great from the father of that baby, from her peers, her friends, telling her abortion was her best choice. Because see, she already had a baby. She had a 6-year-old son, and her facing this group telling her, abort your baby, abort your baby. So when it was time for her to go to that abortion facility, she just stood outside and just cried her eyes out and said, I can't do it. But those ones that were those voices for her, she made that decision to abort. And after that abortion, the deep regret, the deep guilt, shame came upon her. And she wanted to take her life. They sent her home, the abortion facility sent her home with a bottle of opioids. And she was sitting there on her couch in just great pain, but not only physically, but in her heart. She was brokenhearted because she had a 6-year-old. Looking at that 6-year-old, she was very guilty and full of shame. So sitting there looking at these pills, this is what she told me. I just want to go and be with my baby. I don't want to live any longer. But then she heard her 6-year-old playing in there and she knew she couldn't take her life. So she joined our post-abortion recovery group, and she found the healing that she was looking for, the forgiveness, the love, the unconditional love. I know myself, just being in those shoes, I am now able to sit in the centers and say, I know how you feel. I know how you feel when you walk in and say, I want to have an abortion, because of the fear. We don't know where to go, where to turn. But through this program, we're able to help them become healed and whole. And we're able to name our babies. We're able to know that one day we will see them. And so we just are able to minister to these girls and to help them, and men, because with that woman is a man. I met a couple of men. I don't work with men personally, but we have people that work with men. They have deep regret and sorrow. Maybe they were involved. Maybe at that time they pressured her. But you know what? When they come to that realization to know that this is a life and it's their baby, that they want to be healed too. So we have programs that we can get men involved in. And we want the women to know that they can just be free. I will tell you that the women that we have seen that have changed their minds to keep their babies, they've never come back to us and said, oh man, I wish I would have had that abortion. No, they're saying, I am so thankful for your organization that you've been able to help me see that I can carry this baby to term. I can give this baby life. And that's just like we want them to see, choose that culture of life. Because when we choose abortion, we choose that culture of death. And our lives aren't the same. We don't feel the same. We don't look at life the same. But through our program, I've been able to see that making that choice of going through post-abortion recovery has helped me immensely. So we do groups, we do one-on-ones. We're able to walk through this process with women at their level when they're ready at their time. And if you know anybody, you may be sitting here today, or you may know somebody, you may have a friend, a sister, a mother, a grandmother. I work with people from young to older, and I'll tell you, going through that program, but you might know somebody that has been through an abortion. You can let them know that we're there, we're available. They can call us, they can email us, take the brochure, you can give it to them. And I'll be here afterwards. So if you have questions, concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're here for anybody who's looking for healing from their past abortion. Thanks.
So here, right now, we're going to go to our next layer. And there's no easy way to segue into this, believe me, I've tried. So we're just going to jump right in. And it's the issue of politics. There is a unique attribute to politics, and it's this. Whenever you take politics and you add it to something else, you get one thing and one thing only. Do you want to guess what that is? You get more politics. When we took politics and we added it to education, did we get better education? No. When we took politics and we added it to science and medicine, did we get better science and medicine? No. Well, the same is true here. And unfortunately, what has happened is that abortion and politics have become synonymous with each other. And it's very difficult to separate at this point in our society today. And what happens is, when abortion becomes political, it becomes stripped of humanity. At a minimum, abortion will impact a mother and a father and a preborn child. But when it becomes a political entity, it becomes an abstract. It gets stripped of its humanity, and it becomes a football. This camp, this politician versus this camp and this politician, it becomes a volleyball that goes back and forth. And the people that are supposed to be helped throughout this process are the ones that get overlooked. This is the danger of it becoming political. And when it becomes political, it also prevents what I call life-saving conversation from taking place. And here's what I mean by that. Because people inherently today see abortion as a political issue, people and organizations that should be speaking into the issue and providing resources to the issue, they see it as political and they recoil and they go, it's political, I don't want to talk about that. Or I really want to bring this up, but I'm going to alienate all these people because they're going to see it as a political issue, and so they don't speak into the issue. And so we have all these voices silenced because they're afraid to speak into it because they think it's political. This is pervasive in our society today. And I'm here to tell you, it is not, nor has it ever been, a political issue. But it's also on this topic of politics that I actually want to take us to the very last segment here, which is how we define success in this. The politics is a great springboard to success, and here's why. As I mentioned at the onset, we as the body of believers have the ability to transcend politics, right? We have the ability to reach into our communities and to spread hope and resources and draw people in to receive forgiveness. And it's here that I want to introduce you to a concept called the blessers versus the converters. A gentleman by the name of Mark Lowry Russell, he holds a PhD. Part of his doctoral thesis, he met with a group of ministry-led organizations that were going to go to Thailand for 2 years to do missional work. And he broke up all of these businesses into two major categories: blessers, converters. And he broke them into those categories based on their missional statement. For the blessers, their role was to go to Thailand and to bless anybody that came into their path. That could be helping with jobs, that could be helping with skills, building a house, you name it, they just wanted to go to bless people. The converters were going to Thailand with the purpose of converting people to Jesus Christ. These two groups, they go out for 2 years, they come back. Mark Lowry Russell, he conducts 148 interviews with all of these organizations. He brings the data in and he goes, okay, let's start with the blessers. Were you able to reach your objective and were you able to bless those that came in your path? He looks at all the data. He says, yes, there's a measurable difference because you went. You blessed those around you. He went and asked the converters the exact same thing. Were you able to bless those around you? And he said, honestly, I can't find any measurable difference. Then he asked the converters, well, your stated intent was you wanted to go convert people to Jesus. How many conversions did you have after 2 years in the field? 2 conversions. He goes over to the blessers and he asks them the exact same thing. You weren't going to convert people, but how many salvations did you have in 2 years? 96. I highlight this as an example because words are not enough, and it's certainly not enough when it comes to the topic of abortion. We have to truly provide resources and help that go along with those words to bring true blessing and change. And it's here that I want to show you how this plays out, and I want to introduce you to a man named Gustavo. Now, Gustavo is a young man born and raised in central LA, gang member, went to juvie, got shot, broke his jaw, went to prison, got out of prison, moved back to Phoenix, Arizona, changed his life around. While in Arizona, he and his girlfriend, they got pregnant. She reached out and she found Choices Pregnancy Centers at 19th Avenue and Camelback Road. Now, Gustavo is also a student at ASU, and he was given a class project. Write a paper on an organization that has had the greatest impact on your life, and he chose Choices Pregnancy Centers. He reached out to Choices to get a hold of me because he wanted to interview me for his project. When I heard his story, I said, hold on, I want to interview you. I want to hear your story. So here's what he tells me. He said, I didn't want to go to Choices with my girlfriend. It's the last place I wanted to be. He said, we walked in. He goes, I know what I look like. He points to himself. He's head to toe in tattoos. He said, but at Choices, nobody judged me. They were friendly. They greeted with a smile. He said, you guys provided all of these free services for us. He said, you gave us all of these free resources from the boutique. And he's like, I had to ask multiple times, are you sure all this stuff is free? He said, I took all of your parenting education programs. He said, I want to go back and take all of them again. He said, I want to become a facilitator so I can lead all of those classes. Keep in mind, Gustavo is not a believer, but his life is being fundamentally transformed because a group of blessers who believe in Jesus Christ put action behind their words, and they minister to these people that come in every single day. Now, Gustavo works as an Uber driver. That's how he makes a living. And he said, I use my job as an Uber driver as a platform to tell everybody that comes into my car my story. And he says, I tell them all about Choices, and I tell them about my beautiful 3-year-old boy that's alive today because of the work of Choices. That is what success looks like. When it comes to the church and our opportunity to present here at the church, it's actually a very simple message. And we know this can be a very complicated, divisive, nuanced issue. At the end of the day, we're talking about real people going through real struggles. They have real stories, and they're just looking for somebody to provide real help to them. And the fact that we get to get up on stage and present this to you today, I hope it gives you new information and a new perspective on how to talk about this. And here's why this matters. If every church across the valley if every neighborhood and community across the valley knew that the church in their neighborhood, in their community, offered support on this issue, welcomed men and women in who are facing unplanned pregnancies, and even welcomed in men and women who have gone through abortion, but did not do so with condemnation and judgment, if they knew that was a resource, it would fundamentally change this conversation overnight. And that's our prayer for you today. It's how do we attack this issue? We attack it as the body of believers coming together to be blessers to the community. And as I mentioned at the onset, there's no greater organization on the planet that can implement more change in the community than when the church comes together. And if you can read the tagline up in our slide there, it's on every slide, but it's love the individual, change the culture. That's what we do at Choices every single day. When I came to Choices 10 years ago to join the board of directors, I thought I knew everything there was to know about the pro-life space. I could not have been more wrong. And 6 years ago, when I took the role as president and CEO, one of the board members asked me, hey, what was the transition like going from the board to running the organization? I said, well, it's very simple. You realize how quickly you don't know anything about what's going on until you actually step into the seat and meet culture face to face every single day, which is what happens inside of Choices. And I'll be candid with you. When I came on board, I had this hubris that we were going to see mass transformation across the valley with regards to pro-life and the abortion issue. And then God quickly humbled me, and he said, that's not how it works. The way that we see change throughout this conversation is meeting that one individual right where they're at, providing the hope and the care and the resources that they need, and the message of Jesus Christ. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of intentionality. You have to roll your sleeves up, and it can get really dirty. But guess what? Sin is dirty. Our sin is dirty. And all of it culminates at the work on the cross. And that is our overarching message to our clients when they come in. That's the greater love of Jesus that we share with them when they come in. It doesn't matter what you've done. Either the cross covers that or it doesn't. There's no middle ground. So, as we finish up today, I hope you carry with you a different perspective. We have a table set up in the back. We have a bunch of information if you'd like to learn more. Myself, Lorraine, and a few other staff members will be back there. We would love to answer any questions you may have, whether you agree, whether you disagree. That's okay. We would love to have dialogue with you, and I thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Thank you.
So my goal today in bringing them in is to open the conversation. As a church, we haven't discussed this in the 28 years I've been here, except tangentially once or twice. Statistically, there are women in this room right now who have had abortions. And for the most part, I think they feel like Lorraine. You feel like Lorraine, and that is that you've got to be quiet. You'll be rejected. We need to open the conversation. I would like this church to become a safe place where you can find help, men or women who've been involved in this, and where we can help our young ladies and young men make better choices and not end up in the painful aftermath of abortion. This needs to be a healing community, but a healing community has to be, well, where you cover sin, you don't prosper. It's got to be, doesn't mean you have to tell everybody, but this should be a place where you can find somebody to get the support and the help that you need. I was looking online just a little bit about post-abortion trauma, and according to the American Psychiatric Association, it does not exist. There is no such thing as abortion trauma. In fact, they say the trauma of abortion is people who needed it but couldn't get it. So if you are experiencing abortion trauma, the world tells you you're wrong. I'd like the church to tell you you're forgiven, you're loved. We want to help you find healing. That's the goal. And this needs to be a place where you're not afraid to be known, no matter what the sin is. If it wasn't handled at the cross, it wasn't handled. And you don't need to talk Jesus into forgiving you. He's trying to talk you into accepting his forgiveness, because accepting his forgiveness is the first step towards healing. And that's the goal. Transformation, renewal, healing. So I'm just going to say we don't have a program, we don't have a plan that next week we're going to, but I wanted to bring Mark and Lorraine and the other folks that came to help me open up the subject. and that as a family we can begin to serve one another, because this is an area that needs service in every group. I hope you found hope today. I hope if you need a space for healing, you realize that we don't maybe have the resources here now, but there is someplace you can go and get some help. I would love it personally if someday that mobile clinic could be in our parking lot once a month or whatever. I would love it if we could open up our space for post-abortion counseling and healing right here at our church. I don't know what God's going to do, but I believe that if he's going to do something, I believe he is going to do something, and I believe it will be through an individual or two or three. God may lead one or two or three of you or more to find the healing you need, and then he may call you to become a healer. And that may be the way we become involved as a church. Jesus came to earth, and his society wanted him to take on the Romans, and he wanted to take on the hearts. And sometimes when they look at something like abortion, the attitude is, well, we got to take on the government. We got to stop this law. We got to change this law. Frankly, folks, I don't care whether they ever change the law or not. That's an overstatement. But the reality is, if the only reason people aren't doing it is because the law says don't do it, God looks on the heart and he says, if you hate, you're guilty of murder. If you lust, you're guilty of adultery. If you want, you're guilty of doing. Our goal is not to stop abortions. Our goal is to help people make better choices and find healing. And as Jesus touched people one at a time, and that annoyed the leadership wanted him to take on the system. And Jesus says, no, I'm going to take on your sick and sad hearts. And that's what we need as a church to do. To ask God, who can we serve? How can we serve them? And be prepared if that service falls into this area of abortion, either counseling counseling to choose life, or how to overcome the pain and trauma of an abortion. We need to be ready for that. We as a church need to ask God to make us ready to minister to whatever the brokenness is that walks in our doors. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you for the time that these dear people from Choices have taken to come and share with us. And I pray that this will be the planting of a seed. I don't know where you're going to plant it, how you're going to plant it, but in our hearts, that will lead to a growth and a transformation and a blossoming, a fruiting, to where serving people in their brokenness is something we will do even better than we're doing now, and in more areas than we're doing it now. Bless this ministry. Bless our church in our seeking to become better ministers. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.